So Jimmy, let's talk about 1 GB segments in Postgres. Could you tell a little bit about 1 GB segments and how they can become a problem when you have a 20 terabyte table?
Right. So every table in Postgres is one or more files on disk. And what we call a segment is one of those files that belongs to the same table. Each one, the default segment size for Postgres is 1 GB. So if you have a 10 gigabyte table, then it's broken into 10 files of 1 GB each. And that's what we call segments. Now, it's really hard to change segment size because it's compiled into Postgres. So you have to build your own Postgres with a different segment size if you want to change it. So it's generally accepted that that is not ideal practice. You should generally try to use, unless you have really specific requirements and really specific abilities to maintain your own build of Postgres, you should generally use a community package or one provided by whichever company is giving you Postgres support. So the segment size is pretty much stuck at 1 GB for most people. And the problem with that segment size is that now that we have huge tables, I keep hearing all the time of databases that exceed 5 or 10 terabytes, right? I once was engaged with a customer that had a 400 terabyte database.
Oh my God.
That's bound to have, that was the biggest one we ever heard of in the Postgres customers that we dealt with. Now, you are bound to have tables that are multi-terabyte in size when you have databases of this size. And the problem with that, as I said, is that, let's say if you have a 20 terabyte table, that means that it's going to have 20,000 segments. So that means that the table's rows are split across 20,000 files on disk. And this can be a problem because there's this old piece of code in Postgres that is the file called md.c. And MD stands for magnetic disk. That tells you the age of the code, right? And one of the things that happens inside this file is that you have things that loop over the segments of a table whenever something happens, right? So when you run a query, it loops over all the segments of the table to make sure that you get all your rows or whatever. Now, the problem is easy to understand, right? When you have a table that's 1 GB, that code, however short and efficient it is, only gets executed one time. When you have a 20 terabyte table, it then has to loop and execute 20,000 times.
Yep.
So that can be a hidden performance pitfall in Postgres. When you have tables that are excessively large, apart from the obvious things that are visible to you, such as that you need to go through more rows or bigger rows, right? It's also the fact that Postgres has to run things multiple times because you're looping through so many files.
So from your experience, did you ever see someone changing that 1 GB size? I know they are to source compile, right? But did you ever see someone changing it?
So, as I said, people who work around Postgres, we generally recommend that people don't compile their own Postgres. I have come across organizations that have built their own Postgres for specific reasons, but segment size wasn't one of them. I generally haven't seen many people compile Postgres just for this. There's other things that need to be that needed to be changed in the Postgres configuration at build time that I saw people taking advantage of, but generally speaking, not many people touch this.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy.